want to take a look now and discuss why are management theories useful. Management theories are frameworks and concepts which help us to interpret business strategy. And this has been the key takeaway I got when I did my MBA at Cass Business School back in the 90s. I came away with a whole set of frameworks, a whole set of tools which enabled me to interpret the businesses I saw around me. So they encourage you to look at businesses through different prisms, through a different set of viewpoints, so that you can look at them and make critical evaluations, but with a set of rules and guidelines to help you interpret what you take a look at. Now, in business strategy, there are an infinite number of variations, as you can imagine. You can look at any business and find differences to the business next to it. And of course, there are good strategies and there are bad strategies. However, a good strategy for one company can be a bad strategy for another company. Let's look at Apple. We've discussed Apple already. What if Apple decided to sell all their phones for $100 each because they want to increase market share? Do you think that would be a good strategy for Apple? Well, if you've done the SWOT analysis assignment, then you'll probably come to the conclusion it wouldn't be. Let's take a look at a number of these approaches, these management theories. And the first one I want to talk to you about is scientific management theory. This was devised by an American mechanical engineer, Frederick Taylor, who pioneered it quite a long time ago. Now, he looked at 19th century work and saw that the main motivation was to, from the employer's point of view, was to try to make their people work as hard as possible, frankly for as little as possible, with no real care about them, their welfare or anything else. And the stick that they held against them was that they would lose their job. And if they lost their job, that often meant they lost their housing, and then they'd have absolutely no income and there was no welfare and all the rest of it. If you think about how people were treated in the cotton mills in the 19th century, you'll understand exactly what I'm thinking about. However, Taylor argued that actually what motivated people was money. Money was the incentive for working, and he coined a phrase, a fair day's wages for a fair day's pay. Now, when you take that approach, you can start to look at the workplace in a very different light, because you can basically say that people are working for a completely different incentive. In this case, it's money rather than the fear of losing their job. So you can start to standardize workplace practices and rules. You can simplify the organization and tasks, because it didn't matter if one person was doing, they were doing different things, as long as you could organize the tasks and get them working together in a scientific way. And work became a collaboration as well between an employer and employee. The relationship was bound together by money, not by the stick of trying to throw you out of a job. Systems management theory takes a slightly different approach and basically argues that business is a system, a bit like the human body, with lots of different parts, and they have to all work together for the body to thrive and to stay alive. So organizational success in systems management theory depends on synergies, efficiencies, interdependence, and interrelations between different systems. So your heart has to work with your blood system to pump blood around, and the blood system has to provide oxygen to the brain. And if the brain does that, then something else does this. You see what I mean? It works as a system. Another good example of this in business is the value chain. The value chain is a system with one part of the system, one part of the value chain, depending on another. Now, in systems theory, employees are one of the most important elements, but there are also different subgroups and systems in there, departments, work groups, business units. And the challenge for management is to optimize their system within their organization to work to the best possible effect, to get the best possible results, to make the most profit. But they're encouraging different parts of the organization to work collectively and collaboratively rather than as purely as isolated units. Contingency management, devised by Fred Fielder, basically argues that no one management approach suits every organization. And this is real Fox thinking. He's basically saying there are lots of variables, internal and external, which affect which management approach is best. And the manager has to, work on the fly, has to respond to the challenges, to the inputs and all the rest of it. And the traits of the manager, the traits of the leader, directly relate to how effective they are. But Fielder argues that leaders must be flexible to adapt to a changing environment, and they need to have different traits and different approaches depending on the circumstances they find them in. So you can't say that you have to do everything one way. You may do one thing in a particular way today, but you may have to change your approach tomorrow if there's a different challenge. So there is no one specific technique for managing a company. Leaders have to be quick to adapt to the most suitable management style for a particular situation. Theory X and Theory Y really postulate two opposite approaches to the way you look at the management, but they basically say, depending on which viewpoint you take, then you have to adopt a particular style. This was devised by Douglas McGregor, and he basically has two contrasting approaches. And the first one is the authoritarian approach, which is Theory X, and the second one is the participative approach, which is Theory Y. Now, in Theory X, which is very pessimistic, team members are not passionate about their work, they're not incentivized, they're not interested. In order to get them to work, management has to be authoritarian and basically has to force them to work, set strict rules, really cracks the whip, and it takes a very hard line approach. Theory X. In Theory Y, it's the absolute opposite. The team members are enthusiastic and committed and keen to learn and keen to move forward. So what does this mean? It means that the management can adopt a participative style of management and can work with their team members to collectively get the best result. I hope you can see the contrast in the two. So the approach taken by management will then affect the performance of the team. And so the management has to evaluate what the people he's got and then, react accordingly. I mean, in my view, Theory X is not a place I'd want to work. Theory X is pessimistic about employees who need motivating. They need the whip to be cracked. They need a stick behind them to get them going. And it's a very tough environment to work in, I should imagine. Theory Y is the absolute opposite. It's optimistic. The team members are very keen to get on and work, and they want to all work together and grow. And it's a very much more interesting and much more participative environment to work in. And that means that the management can take a completely different approach in the way they motivate and organize their team members. So how can management theories help with business strategy exactly? Well, I'll give three suggestions for you. Firstly, clearly, if you can use these theories to improve the organization, the way it's led, the way it runs, the way it performs, then you're going to improve your productivity and you're going to get the most out of your people and you're going to be more profitable. If you can get a better organized organization, that will probably lead to you having a flatter hierarchy and faster decision making. So it enables you to simplify and speed up decision making, which is a huge plus, particularly in a fast moving market. And finally, the whole issue of staff participation. If you understand these theories, then you can develop interpersonal relationships within the workplace environment that will help the organization be more coherent, more collaborative, and as a result, well, apart from being a much better place to work, will be a much more effective organization. So that's a quick high-level look at management theories, really what they are, but also why and how you can apply them to businesses from quite a high level and why they can actually help your business.